Risers, and welcome to another episode of the Rising with Christian podcast. I am so excited to have our guest today, Dr. Heather Penny, who is truly phenomenal. Welcome to the show, Dr. Heather.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, so glad to have you, y'all. She is a coach, she's a former teacher, she's an advisor. She truly is passionate about helping leaders, whether at home or whether in the office, to become their best whole selves. And so I am so happy to dive in. Heather, we are going to get started. So let's start with your background. Heather, I know that you started in the classroom. What was your journey in getting your PhD?
Well, it started out in education. Honestly, I'm a super curious person. I love learning. And I taught little guys, and then I started moving up into junior high. And then I moved up into getting my master's in leadership, and I training educators and working at the university level as a professor. And then I started taking some consulting jobs. And then I started realizing, I think I want to teach more on what I want to teach on. So I went back to school, got my PhD in human services, and I really focused my work on how people spiral up versus spiral down. And I've really focused a lot of my qualitative study on what increases your career fulfillment and your emotional well-being, because I believe if we're happy, we're probably doing what we're made to do. And if we're unhappy, we're probably trying to force ourselves into a life that we're really not made for. And then that moved me into really coaching people in this area for about the last 10 plus years. I've had my own coaching company, and I work with individuals and groups and organizations all over the world and supporting individuals finding their best life and really stepping into that with more clarity, more confidence, and more courage, so they can be a great member in addition to any team. But I believe it starts with yourself.
Yes, it does. And the spiral is so real, right? So talk about the difference of the spiral up versus the spiral down.
Yeah, it started when I was doing the research, and it kept saying we are in a social epidemic, is what social researchers were calling it, where we are growing as a country, particularly North America. I was studying the participants here, and we are growing in our anxiety and in our depression.
Yeah,
we know this. And even as an educator, as a parent, I saw this starting lower and lower ages, where as an educator, I kept reading the research. Every couple of years, it was starting it used to be 15 or 16 years old. We got it down to 8 or 10-year-olds. How is this going in the wrong direction? So at the end of every study, it would say more research is needed, more research is needed. What I began to realize as a researcher is saying, we've got a really robust conversation around how we're spiraling down. There's lots of conversations around why we're anxious, why we're depressed. What I realized is we didn't have enough conversations of what helped people spiral up. So even as a coach, I started realizing we needed to grow that conversation, because when we are talking a lot about our issues, which, don't get me wrong, we need to be talking about our issues.
Right.
But if that's the only thing we're talking about, we're not giving people a leg up to say, okay, well, now I've dealt with my issues. I know for myself, I went to counseling and loved it, loved the process of counseling. But then I came out going, well, now what? I could always find something wrong with me. So be able to say, what do I need to do to move forward and begin the process of spiraling up? And that's where I really came up with, when I started researching and talking to people and saying, hey, what's making you grow in your career fulfillment and your emotional well-being? 4 areas came up. It was people saying, I learned how to check, and I call them the 4 tires, because if one tire is flat, then you're flat, Yes. So I call them the 4 tires in my coaching practice, and in my book, I reference it. But it's this idea that when you're checking your levels of fulfillment, where am I feeling fulfilled? That's a way you're starting to fill that tire. People don't even know how to stop and ask that. The second one is, and I call these the 2 front tires because they have to do with being. The second one is having to do with affirmation. Where am I being affirmed? How do I want to be affirmed? Where's my potential getting affirmed? And then the back 2 tires I call growth and achievement. Where am I growing and where am I achieving? We have to keep a pulse on those 4 tires, and that begins the process of us spiraling up. And that came out of the conversations I had with so many participants that said, tell me what makes you spiral up. Why are you still loving your job? Why is it that you're still positive about what you're doing in life? What made you leave your last job? I was checking to see all these, and these four themes just kept coming up.
That I'm like bursting over here with energy because the tire analogy, I just had a conference in Maryland and it was on leadership, next level leadership and with
Mm,
women. And when we talk about the wellness wheel, the various components of one's wellness, whether social, environmental, physical, mental, so on, I was saying that your wellness is like a wheel. And
mm.
if one area is deflated or depleted, it's similar to a flat tire.
Good job. See, you
I
didn't need to get
know,
the PhD, Christian.
look, no, but Dr. Penny said, it's about the fulfillment. It's about the affirmation. So
That's right.
I definitely
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
give you credit to that. But one person, she really had me very intrigued. Naturally, and I don't know if it's just for women or humans, but we
Mhm,
focus on the areas that we're doing the worst in, or the areas that we
mhm,
need improvement in. And one person said, well, everyone going around the room, they're talking about the areas of wellness that they aren't doing that great in. And what does it
mhm,
look like for us to embrace where we are, to embrace the things that we're doing good at? So
mhm.
as you talk about the wellness wheel and you talk about leadership and becoming our best whole selves, do you think that we naturally place an emphasis on the areas that need improvement? And how do we begin to embrace where we are along our journey with empathy and grace?
Oh, yeah, you're right on, Christian, right on. Our natural bent as humans is to lean toward that negative. So I call it the pull away from the drift. We tend to drift toward, what do I need to fix about myself? What are my issues? What are my weaknesses? Where are my challenges? And I always want to say, yes, those are important questions, but we are giving way too much attention to that. We need to balance it out with, where am I strong? Where are my successes? Where have I really shown so much potential in my life? And how do I build on that and grow that? We almost feel like it's maybe too arrogant to have that conversation, or we just don't have enough leaders having that with us. I
Mhm.
was just, for example, coaching a leader today. And this is a formula I use. I say 3-to-1. Give them 3 positives. Here's specifically where I see you doing well in your personal growth. Here's where I see you doing well in maybe your attitude. Here's where I see you doing well in maybe getting results. Tell them very specifically 3 areas and give them specific examples. Then come in with a target growth area. And you know where I think you could even do better? I think in your area of whatever, solution oriented and getting results. I think you can grow in this, and let me be the coach that comes alongside you and encourage you that you have this in you. Not you're blowing it or you're getting it wrong, but you see all your potential. And guess what? I'm going to help you
That's good.
rise to the next level. I had
There
to
we
bring that in
go.
because I love your title. Helping people rise is that process of spiraling up, versus if you tell them 3 things they're doing wrong, how are they going to walk away from that annual performance review or that check-in they're having with their leader? We care deeply of what our leaders think of us. Use that time to build and help them feel empowered by the strengths and the potential they hold within them. And then you tell them where they can continue to grow, not you're blowing it and you got to fix it. No, you get to continue to grow and evolve. And guess what? I am too. So I use myself as an example all the time as a coach and as a leader, saying, here's where I'm growing, not here's where I'm blowing it. Here's where I want to get better. I mean, literally, my word for the year is patience.
Mm,
I want to grow in that.
that's
So
good.
I'm holding myself accountable for that. And I'm letting my husband know about that too. And my kids, and they're loving that as well, because I'm a fast processor, fast thinker. And sometimes that could let me drift to a little bit of impatience, Christian.
We've all been there, and I love the mentioning of your husband and your children because you
Yeah.
you said on your site, you said you focus on the whole person,
Mhm.
because what works in our professional world can also be applied in our personal lives. And with
Mhm.
that analogy of the 3-to-1, I'm like, oh yes, that'll work with your children, that'll work with your
Mhm.
husband, that'll work with your friend. Instead of just
Yeah.
going, I want you to change, or I
Yep.
felt this way. How
Yep.
do communicate? And so I
Mhm.
love how that language is interchangeable. What are your thoughts on like the work life balance? Because what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is that you help people bring their best whole selves into whatever environment, whether that's
Yeah.
work or whether that's home, and that it's not like two different people. How do you feel about that terminology of work life balance, and what does being your best whole self in all spaces look like?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not a fan of the term work life balance because it does connote I got to be two different people, one here at home, one here at work. I like to call it more of like work-life harmony. How is it that we are bringing our whole self to our work, bringing our whole self to our home, but there's no division. There's no incongruency. Who I am as a mother and as a wife of almost 30 years, and as a leader and as a coach, leader of my own company and a coach for clientele that I worked with, it's so much the same. You're going to find so much congruency with me. Certainly I'll have different like personal and professional boundaries that I monitor differently. But for the most part, you're going to get someone who's curious, who's a lifelong learner, who's a student of myself and of other people, who is really cognizant of the fact I've got one shot at this life and I'm going to live it to the fullest to my last breath. I mean, these are my core values of who I am. And whether I am coaching you in the workplace on better communication skills or dealing with constructive conflict, or whether I'm parenting my 2 college students now, or navigating my marriage and trying to figure out that next level up for our marriage in empty nest season. I mean, these are just actual examples that I'm living out today where I'm saying, this is me, the whole package. And so every arena that I'm stepping into with curiosity, humility, lifelong learning. And I speak about this in my book too. My faith is important to me. So of course, my connection with my higher power, which I call God, and I believe is very loving and in pursuit of me, I'm so grateful that I have that connection. So there's this constant state of growth and evolution that I am focusing on. How do I bring my best to this moment? And by the way, I'm not alone in it. I've got a creator who is helping me get on my life path. And my true belief is that I'm being led and guided. So every instance that I'm stepping into, I bring in that true belief. My false belief is I'm on this alone and I better figure it out and not fail.
Right.
So kind of watching that mindset helps you show up into your arenas, and you're focusing less on being the best work person or being the best home person. You're really focused on being the best person and helping your worlds create harmony between each other.
And when a person in their idea, in their mind, fell in leadership, fell in the home, fell as a mother. And I love how you really have clientele, whether they're in the home or you're working with CEOs of amazing companies. You believe that we all are leaders. How do you help people become resilient in their leadership, resilient in, wow, I didn't know how to do this and I may have failed, but I am still going to show myself grace and compassion. Let's talk about resilience.
Yes. Oh boy. I'm a high achiever and I hate failing. So let's just get that out in the open. And so when I fail, I have to follow my own advice, which is I have to show grace and compassion to myself. And if I can't, I go find people that hold grace and compassion with me and for me until I can hold it myself. Wow. We're made to do life with other people, but I want to say be selective. When you fail, you don't need someone telling you, I knew you shouldn't have tried that. Or I knew you were going to fail. You don't need that. You need someone saying, wow, that stings. What is it you're learning from this? And I did it with one of my team members today. There was a conflict happening on my team. And I had talked to the other team member and I said, hey, did you all clear the air? And she said, we did. And here's what I learned. And she told me exactly what she learned. It was just this innocent confusion about an email that she wasn't getting. The other one said, I talked with her today. I said, what'd you learn? And she said, I should have checked this months ago. I created stories and narratives around this that wasn't true. And all I said was, well done, just well done. Nobody failed here. We all stepped up to the plate, did the best we could. It went sideways. Everybody went back to their corners and said, what do I need to own here? And what do I need to learn so it doesn't happen next time? Wow. That's the definition of success, not focusing on how awkward it got or the misunderstandings or anything else. And I just said, there's no shame in that. If we're all learning and we see life as a classroom, you see how it just takes the pressure off everything versus, and I'll give myself a personal example. I spoke once and it was an epic fail, Christian. Epic fail. This was earlier on in my career.
Yeah.
And so the temptation is you're not made to speak. You should never speak again. Nobody wanted to hear this. I had to go find safe people in my life that said, Heath, you're made for this. Let's kind of unpack it a little bit after you've gotten over the sting and the rejection and the sense of failure, because that's real. Yeah. I don't want to minimize that. But after you get over that, I'm here to help you think through what it is you get to learn from it. And I learned two things very valuable. Know your audience.
That's
I
good.
was speaking to the wrong audience. It wasn't all me that had failed. I had not vet my audience well. And then the second thing is I learned better teaching and keynote speaking skills that I hadn't learned. I knew as a teacher, but it didn't translate well into a 20-minute keynote.
Mhm.
So things like that was just little basic stuff that after I got on the other side of the humiliation of the failure, moving into, okay, life is a classroom. What do I need to learn so
Mm.
that I can learn what I need to learn from this? Even if it is speaking's not my forte, I'm open to that being my lesson as well. But I was like, that doesn't feel right. It feels like I'm made to speak. What happened here? And that's where it stings the most, when we fail in an area that we feel like we're made for.
Wow. That is great. And that brings me to a book that I absolutely love by Marie Forleo. And her book is called Everything is Figure Outable. And she has this
Yes.
quote in there that I quote all the time. It says, win or learn, never lose. And
Mm-hmm.
that mindset is what you're talking about, being resilient, asking the right questions to yourself, to your team,
Mm-hmm.
and just having this posture of being a forever student, whether you are
Yeah.
making six figures, whether you're getting called around the world to speak, you're
Yeah.
always in a posture to learn. Now, in learning comes a lot of responsibilities. So how do you motivate women or leaders to balance the responsibilities that they have? Because sometimes it can be overwhelming. So, what tips do you have with juggling the responsibilities of leadership?
Oh, yeah. This is where really I started my whole career. And I would say it's the heartbeat of our true fulfillment and our happiness. And I want to use the allegory I use, and you can find this book on Amazon. I've got a couple books out, but it's called The Bracelet.
Mm,
And I'll hold it up here for my people who are watching. But it's about this little girl who wears all these bracelets. She's been given a bracelet, and then over her lifetime, she gets more and more bracelets. But what that does is the weight of these bracelets prevent her from doing two things that she loves to do. One is to go jump on her tire swing, and I call that our active rest. And the second one is to go spend time under the stars where she hears the voice on the wind tell her she doesn't need her bracelets. And I call that the contemplative rest.
wow.
So in all my work I do, and that's a really short allegory, but I use it also in my chapter book, because my clients now get on the phone. They'll be, Heather, I need help with my bracelets today. I've got too many on. And I'll say, okay, great. Let's start looking at them. And they already know where I'm going to go with this. The key to everything moving toward more levels of fulfillment and step into the life you're made for has to do with rest. And it
Mm,
has to do with a restorative rest. And again, there's two types of rest. The tire swing, which is go and have fun, go on a
mhm.
hike, go on a run, sit down and enjoy a good novel, paint, do whatever it is you love doing. That's your tire swing. Restorative rest is actually taking time, journaling, time under the stars, literally sitting under the stars and staring up to them if you need to, and just seeing if you can hear what it is that your heart's whispering to you. And if you're a person like me that believes in a higher power, you're listening to some sort of voice on the wind. That's what I call it in my book. That just reminds me, Heather, you're not made for this. You get to set this aside. And I anchor a lot of my beliefs in this off an old ancient poetry by King David. It comes out of Psalms 23, and it talks about the
Mhm.
Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want,
Yeah.
makes me lie down in green pastures. Everything about that metaphor is about rest. And many of us have grown up on that and have heard of that. And so it's this awareness of, to do more, you have to rest more. And that is so counterintuitive. We're
Very.
often saying to do more, you got to strive more, you got to hustle, you got to push.
Mm,
It's almost like people don't believe me initially. And it's almost like I have to say, okay, stay with me. I
yeah.
promise you, just stay with me. I'm going to help you take off some of these bracelets. I'm going to help you find your tire swing again. I'm going to help you find your start time. And when you start doing that, your clarity begins to grow,
Mhm.
and you start realizing the bracelets you don't want to keep on anymore. Your confidence begins to grow, which has to do with your true beliefs and false beliefs. What are you really believing? I have to wear these bracelets and take care of the world, and I can't go play. I can't ever take care of me. That's what we
Yeah.
morph into. And then the courage piece is about taking action.
Wow. That is so great. I'm gonna have to get that book because got so many braces on. And
Yeah.
I actually for the podcast coming out tomorrow is just take your cape off, and just this notion that we have to save the world and we have to be
Yeah.
super busy and we have to knock everything off of our to-do list. But what does it look like to be present and to nurture yourself and to pour into
Right.
yourself?
Right.
And that looks like rest and
Mm-hmm.
rejuvenation. As you stated, like the world and society always talking about how to make six figures and how to grow your
Yeah.
this and how to grow. And the grind is okay.
Yeah.
But it is also great to take care of the vessel that we have. And we only have one vessel. We only have
Right.
one body. We only
Right.
have one mind. And we have to
Right.
take care of it.
Yeah.
For someone listening, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I don't rest enough." Well, we're not going to go there because one of your coaching philosophies
Yeah.
is that nothing is wrong with you and you're not
Mhm.
broken. So let's
Mhm.
unpack that. Let's set
Oh,
somebody
I'd love
free.
to. Yeah, usually when people come and find me, and I work with individuals and teams quite a bit, but usually when they find me, they're kind of coming to the end of their selves and really kind of coming into the end of how life used to work for them.
Mm,
So I hold it's a sacred space because we've all been there, and I've been there several times because it's this time where we're getting ready to have breakthrough.
yeah.
But I always tell people the process to breakthrough is not fun.
Mm,
It's messy, it's vulnerable, it's scary, it's frightening, it's intimidating. I could keep going on, but the other side of breakthrough, all of it is worth it. And there's never a person has ever said to me that that breakthrough was not worth it. I mean, they're all like, "Oh, thank God I'm on the other side of it." And now I have, hindsight's 2020. I
mhm,
was reinventing myself. I was learning new ways. I was feeling insecure because I'm having to try new ways in life, like learning how to rest for the first time. And I create this, what is called a thrive plan.
mhm,
So I take people off of the obsession of, I got to fix myself and something's broken with me. And I just gently shift it over to, no, nothing's broken with you. You just kind of came to the end of how life used to work for you. And it's okay.
that's good.
So if I can stay here in the sacred ground with you, and if you give me the time, I work with people the minimum of 6 months because I want them to have that time to begin to change not only their life patterns, but their mind thought patterns, because everything starts in the mind.
Mhm,
So what we're believing about ourselves and about our role in this world is so critical. And I believe if I can help them change their mind thought pattern,
mm,
that's what changes them, and it's sustainable for the rest of their life. So when
mhm.
they get sideways again, they go back to this idea of, wait a minute, what am I believing? So I
Wow.
coach them on understanding, what is it that you're believing? And for these people that are, I love your analogy of the cape, they're not taking off their cape. They're truly believing that it's their job to save the world, or they're truly believing they're God. And
Mm,
I'm saying this with all my fingers pointing back. I have to
yeah.
call myself out. I'm like, who do you think you are? God? You're not God. Your job is just to show up and help people find their truest sense and their connection with their creator,
Mm,
whatever that looks like, whether I work in faith-based communities or non-faith-based, and I work with so many men, women, everyone. I'm
mhm,
very comfortable with how I use my awareness for the way that we're created to be. I believe it's my basic truth across all of humanity. I believe we all have a connection that we're trying to find in this world,
mhm,
and we're going to feel dissatisfied until we find it. But
mm.
here's where I just gently want to whisper to people. I'm like, if you pull back and rest, I promise you, you'll find that clarity again. You'll hear
Yeah.
that voice on the wind. And maybe that voice on the wind may not be, quote, God. It might be a coach in your life. It might have been
Yeah.
an old teacher. It might have
Yeah.
been a parent. It might have been an older sibling who just said, and it makes me think of a voice on the wind I had in my life where my mom, when I was young, I loved reading. She'd turn to me and she said, I think you'd be a good writer one day.
Wow.
I hated writing. I never thought I would be a writer. Fast forward about 30 years later, and I write my first book, and I go, my mom was right. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. That's a great example of the voice on the wind.
Wow. And you are a phenomenal writer. For those who have not read her book, it is called The Life You're Made For. And it is truly, truly phenomenal. And I thank you so much for sharing those nuggets of wisdom of your life and empowerment and leadership and courage
Mm,
in that book. So, The Life You're Made For. I automatically go back to COVID 2020. And I was on this trajectory like most of the people in the world.
mhm,
And things began to pivot, things began to change. And so
mhm,
there's still people, and I talk to them, whether in the pulpit or whether just in society, that are still trying to figure out what their life is made for.
mhm,
They know that
mhm,
they were once on a cycle and they got off the treadmill, but they're now
mhm,
trying to use their new lens and say, what is my life made for? So when people come to you in coaching,
mhm.
like how do you encourage them to begin? What is the first step in discovering the life they want to live?
Yeah, the first thing I have to check is, are they willing to think a new way?
Mm,
And if they're not, and this has been the rare cases, but I do have a small percentage of people that they're just not willing to shift their thinking. They're so committed to their way of thinking that they want to commit me to their way of thinking, and I refuse to commit to their way of thinking
Mhm.
because I know that the best way for them to find a new way to live requires identifying your false beliefs and your true beliefs. And that's going to affect your confidence level. So I think stepping into that conversation is so critical to first kind of assess that. Now, I'll tell you, the majority of the people, once they come to me, they're hungry for growth.
Mhm.
And I think I've got a reputation now in the field that they already know what to expect to come, and they've heard from other people, and so by the time they get to me, the whole focus is their personal empowerment, not feeling like they're listening to a sage. I want them to feel like they're the sage. So my job is to sit there and listen to them and say, what do you truly want? Oh, you want whatever. You want to be able to be advanced in your career, or you want to be able to make six figures, or you want to have a solid marriage, or you want to have a better relationship with your 15-year-old son. They come to me for every single reason, and I've heard them all. My goal is to say, you have the answers within you. You just don't know it yet. So my goal is to help you understand how to slow down long enough and ask better questions. If you're
Mm.
constantly asking the wrong questions, you're going to get wrong answers. For instance, if you're constantly asking what's wrong with me, I'll tell you what, I could write a book of what's wrong with me. I could get really good at that. So we get really good at answering the
Okay.
wrong questions. And I
Yeah.
just say, what if we shift the question and ask what's right with you? And
Mm.
it gets really uncomfortable for a little bit because we don't have that permission to really think about what's right with us. And then I grow that conversation more and more. So I get them to start believing in their own sense of self, that
Mm.
they're truly made to hear themselves. They're truly made to identify their own bracelets, identify their givers of the bracelets, identifying whether they want to keep them on or not. They're truly able to identify their entire swing and stars. My goal is to help them to understand that, because that's what's transformational and life sustainable,
Yeah.
not just do these 5 tips that Heather tells you to do. I want them to be able to hold that power within themselves and feel like this is what it feels like to feel powerful versus
Mm.
this is what it feels like to just do the 5 steps that an expert tells me to do. Then
Wow.
you don't walk away feeling powerful or even transformed. You might feel fixed, but we are reinforcing the fact that they're broken and they can't come up with it themselves.
Mm.
My goal is to keep saying, you got the answers within you. Just stay with me. Let me ask you some key questions and help you ask the right questions. And you'll start answering these in ways that you don't realize. And this
Mm.
happens to me daily. I'll be taking notes and then I'll hear something that sounds so powerful. Like, I think I'm really made to be a public speaker because, when I was younger, I love speaking. And I'll say something later and I'll go, I want to return back to a comment you said. I think I'm made to be a public speaker. And when I was younger, I was really good at it. And they'll go, I said that? That's when I know I've heard an inner wisdom. Or I'll
Wow.
repeat back a phrase that just sounds like, wow, that was an inner wisdom. So it's
Mhm.
almost like I'm a scribe listening very carefully as they're talking to me and to themselves. And then I'm pulling that out saying, here's your clarity. Here's your inner wisdom. It's coming out. It's telling you what you want. You get to listen to it and you get to trust yourself.
And I love how you mentioned that when people come to you, they've made up in their mind that they want change. And
Yeah.
I've read so many books about the power of the mind, change
Yeah.
your brain, change your life, the power of habits,
Yeah.
like all these other
Yeah.
scientific books. But it truly does start with your mind, your mental capacity. For me, depression stood in the way of me
Mhm.
accomplishing my goals. And so I really was like, okay, there's a million things I can focus on, but if I change my brain, I can change my
Mhm.
mindset. My mindset can then change my reality. How do you get people to believe in themselves again? How, because I know that, like, let's say it's March now. Some people went into the new year with all these goals and where they want to change, and maybe they haven't crossed it off their list yet. And now
Mhm.
their confidence level is going down. But how do you change people's mindset as they are striving to rewrite their narratives, change their trajectory in their life, figure out what makes them happy again? When their voice and their
Mm.
mindset is saying, "You can't do it, you tried this before." Let's talk about the mindset shift.
Yeah, I think it's really built on a very basic principle that the truth really will set you free. So
Mm.
when you start hearing the truth and you start experiencing more freedom, that's the biggest motivation of anything. So when someone's like, "Oh my gosh, this is what it feels to feel happy to get up on a Monday morning and go to work." I go, "Yep."
Yeah.
Because they got in touch with the truth of they were in the wrong job or doing the wrong profession or not speaking up to their supervisor, or they're not being honest about a relationship that they're in that they're not enjoying, they don't really trust the truth. The chorus principle I get people to really hook into is the truth really will set you free. Don't be afraid of it. And more importantly, don't be afraid to ask the questions when you don't have the answer.
Mm.
That is terrifying, and I get it. So it's like I'm a buddy along for the ride and says, I'm going to be your fellow sojourner for a while until you don't need anything from my backpack anymore. You got your own backpack on, and you wave goodbye to me and you say, I got this. And I say, yeah, you do. You got this. You totally got this. You've already got everything in your pack that you need, so you're able to move on your own journey. And then I move on to the next person who's on their journey. Some I stay for longer than others. Some I stay for shorter. It just depends on whatever it is they need and what it is, where they are in their journey. Some people are trying to do some phenomenal things in this world. I work with a lot of high achievers. So sometimes I'll stay in the journey with them for a long time because their growth rate is so accelerated. It's not that they need help from me. They need help keeping up with their growth rate. And I just get to keep affirming, yep, maybe you're taking on too much.
Wow.
Maybe try 5 things a day, not your 25 that you're used to.
Yeah.
I just get to be a little bit of voice of wisdom to help them lower their standard of themselves if they put so much pressure on themselves, because that's what grows over time. It's the bracelets too. We just keep saying, well, if I can do these 5 bracelets, I can probably do 2 more. Well, I can probably do 10 more. I can probably do 20 more. And we don't realize how it weighs us down from our true self. When we go on the jump on that tire swing and spend time with the stars, it's a return to our true self. It's a return home to ourselves.
Wow.
And when I speak and teach, that's my main goal. Bring people home. Bring them home to themselves.
Wow.
Don't bring them home to me. Don't bring them home to my greatness or my expertise or anything like that. Bring them home to themselves. If I walk out of that room, and I did a keynote recently, and they said, and one of the best feedbacks I got was, it felt like Heather was speaking directly to me. And I said, perfect. I was bringing you home to yourself so that you got to feel at home with yourself, and you got to remember that the truth truly sets you free.
And this is probably where therapy comes into play. But when people aren't proud of their home or do not feel as if their home is worthy, whether it's trauma, whether it's self-sabotage, how do you begin to soften their hearts and to expand their mind that they can return back to that place? Maybe with some tools or some people or professionals there to help guide them.
Yeah, I know that's such a tender space, and again, a sacred space. And sometimes I'll work with people as they're working in counseling, because counseling is really this process of looking backwards. This is a really simplified definition, but I get asked all the time the difference between counseling and coaching. Counseling is a process of looking back and resolving things. Coaching is the process of looking forward and carving out your next steps in life.
Yeah.
So I like to hold both. I think both are such valuable processes, and surely they certainly overlap in a lot of areas. But if I sense someone, it cannot move forward in life, that's when I'll recommend some counseling, because it's cruel to keep saying, well, you got to just get over that and move forward. No, you don't. You get to give yourself all the time you need to get over that trauma and to reconcile a memory that is keeping you stuck. I don't want to tell you have to move forward, when reality, what you might need to do is sit in that with someone safe to help you create new trauma responses in your head and your mind that reconciles what happened to you as a child. And the younger it is, the harder it is. So I try to really respect that space. A lot of times I will work, if it's really intense, I'll work alongside them as they're working with the counselor. And I help keep the boundary there of saying, that sounds like an awesome thing to talk to your counselor about, so that when you come to me, I'm ready to help move you forward.
That's amazing. And I know one of your pillars of helping people move forward is the 3 C's of living. So let's unpack that.
Yes. Okay. 3 C's. I love it. I coach on this all the time, but I believe part of us living with this sense of power in our life is recognizing that we have the power to live with clarity. We have the power to live with confidence, and we have the power to live with courage. Most importantly, we have the ability to grow and increase all 3 of those. I mean, how exciting is that? Sometimes this is a false belief I realize a lot of people were living with, well, I just got whatever clarity I have, or whatever confidence I have, or whatever courage I happen to have for that moment. Like, did you know that you can grow your clarity? And did you know you can grow your confidence and you grow your courage? And they're like, no. I said, you can. Clarity starts with first pulling over your car and resting. That's what's so counterintuitive. So the more clear, like if I'm having having a hard day where I'm struggling with, I've got a lot of decisions coming at me, I literally will just get up from my desk and or if I don't have time in that moment, I will plan a moment later on that day. I'm like 3 p.m. I have a break. I'm going to go get on my tire swing, whether it's a walk around the park, whether it's getting out in nature, whether it's sitting down with my paints, anything that I love to do, moving me into that right side of the brain. When I come out of that experience, my clarity is increased. People don't realize that that's what you need to do. And if you, the more often you do that, the more your clarity will begin to grow in life. But what's our bend? I don't know what to do. I'm going to try harder. I'm going to call more people. I'm going to do more things. I'm going to do more to-do lists. And then our clarity shrinks even more and more and more, because the thing that you need is the ability to rest. So it all starts with clarity. The confidence is all about your beliefs. Typically now when I work with clients, they know where I'm going with this. I'll say, okay, what do you believe in? And they're like, oh, I know, Heath, I know. I'm believing that I'm not worth it. And I'm like, I know. And in my book, I list a lot of common false beliefs that I hear. And I listed them all out for everybody's sake so that people don't feel alone. Wow. Because if you sat in my chair that I sit every day and listen to hundreds of stories on a weekly basis, you'll recognize there's a theme. I'm not worth it. I'm not lovable. I can't do this. I'm not allowed to do this. There's some basic false beliefs that we're all carrying around with us. And many times the deeper they go, the further back in our story they go. So the confidence piece has to say, identify the false belief, reject it. Now identify a true belief and invite it in. And that's always the hardest part. And that's part of why I'm very busy in the work that I do, because we all need someone to come alongside of us and say, can I really believe that? Yes. Can I really believe that I get to start my own coaching company 15 years ago? I needed help with this. This is where it came out of. Yeah. I got off the corporate ladder and said, I think I want to do something for me and grow something for me. I think I get to believe in me. I think I want to gamble with me. Wow. And I realized I was the only one stopping me from this, because a false belief was, what if I fail? Or what if I don't have what it takes? Or what if I'm not enough? I had to switch into my true belief that says, I am being led and guided. I have everything I need for today to make the decisions I need for today. Now, fast forward 15 years ago, I am returning to some of these true beliefs, and some of these false beliefs have coming to the surface, because with success and several people now on my team and, thousands of clients I've worked with and keynote speaking and writing. Right. It creeps back up. It's humiliating to admit that, but I have to. And I'm like, with success, sometimes those false beliefs creep back up. I'm like, I thought I dealt with that pesky thing, 15 years ago. And I try and say this to people, because I say, you want to learn how to recognize it, not how to be perfect, but how to recognize it. So when the false beliefs creep up, you can address it. And the people in my life that I have, I will say, what are the false beliefs you're trying to reject? What are the true beliefs you're standing in? Like, that's how I'm going to stand with you. That's how I'm going to pray for you. Wow. And I say that to other people too. Here's the false belief. I am fighting today. I'm afraid I have nothing to say at this keynote speak. What? Wow. Where's that even coming from? But I'm fatigued. I'm tired. I'm probably wearing way too many bracelets because I love saying yes. I've missed spending time on the tire swing, listening to the stars. I return back to those practices when life starts getting sideways with us. So that's the whole confidence piece.
Yeah. Sorry, and what I love is that you are unafraid to talk about your faith. And oftentimes in spaces and as we grow in our leadership, we feel like we have to diminish that part of us. But what makes us uniquely us foundationally, we have to hold on to that throughout all pillars of the success in the leadership journey. So I just wanted to just pause and thank you for not shying away from your faith and just maybe encouraging someone else, whether they're CEO or mindset, or whether they're starting their business or pivoting like you from teacher to speaking. Yeah. Just continue to understand, like you said, those core values and never let them go. So thank you for
you're so welcome. And I respect people of all faiths or non-faith. I just feel like I don't have the corner market on that. So I think all I try and do is be transparent where it's appropriate. I work in corporate America, so I respect the separation of church and state. I like the fact our country has that. So I don't really speak to it on that level. But if people hold a faith and they want to know more, I show them how to integrate it. But I don't have to give any kind of religious doctrine. My faith is a part of who I am. So if we try and cut that off, we're cutting pieces of ourselves off. So my book is written to people of whether you've got faith backgrounds or not. What I had to be really upfront about and clear about is just an introduction I wrote. My faith is important to me, because I didn't want anyone to think I do the 3 C's, clarity, confidence, and courage. And I do it all on my own. You're
Mhm.
welcome, world. I didn't want anyone to think that. I wanted people to understand, hey, and then I put a personal note from the author at the end of the book saying, here's how my faith has exponentially helped me grow my 3 C's. But I'm giving so much respect to the space of people have been abused by religious doctrine,
Mhm.
propaganda for a different kind of theological thinking. I
Mhm.
deal with it on a consistent basis. And so I'm really proud of the fact that I keep a safe space for people to grapple with wherever they are, in or out of their faith, or whether they can't even handle faith. I'm like, that's okay. We don't need to talk about any of that. Like, we
Mhm.
don't need that. We get to meet you where you're at, and you get to tell me where it is that you're struggling and where it is that you want to have more clarity, confidence, and courage. And the courage piece is all just about taking action. You don't want to
Mhm.
take action until you've got your clarity and your confidence. And so my job as the coach is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't want to jump out of that airplane without a parachute.
Mhm.
Your parachute is your clarity and your confidence. So don't jump without the parachute. And at the same hand, don't keep circling the landing space and never jump, because then you're never going to move forward in life. So the
That's
courage
good.
is really important to take action steps, but your action steps come after you've worked through your clarity. You spent time under the stars in your tire swing. You've identified your true beliefs and false beliefs. Now you're ready to take action.
Mhm.
And you want to make
So
sure you're taking action based off your true beliefs, not your false beliefs, because I've
I
done
love
both.
it. This is so amazing. How can they work with you, Dr. Penny? Share
Oh, I'd
share
love
your
to, Christian.
site. Absolutely. Your social media, all of it.
Yes, yes. So I'm all over social media. I'm Instagram, Heather Penny PhD. You can find me just on my website is probably the best way to start, because I put everything on there. I've got tons of free stuff like blogs, articles. I write for a lot of different magazines. I have a weekly blog that goes right into your email box if you want to sign up for that on my podcast, on my website. And then, of course, I do a podcast, which I want to have you on, Christian. I want to have you come join my podcast.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We'll have fun. We'll talk about
Let's
your cape.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that old thing. And what's your website? Is it Heather
Heather
Penny?
Penny. Yeah,
Yeah.
heatherpenny.com.
I love it. Yes to the marketing team. Let's go.
Yeah.
So this has been amazing. I thank you so much for your time and
Oh,
for
you're
your
welcome.
expertise and for just holding space for people from all walks of life that are listening.
Yes.
I like to end with this question to all of my guests, and it's talking about rising. So
Mm.
how can you encourage a listener to rise in their life and their leadership? What comes to mind for you?
Very first thing is find your peeps. I could not have gotten where I'm at in my life. And I want to say be very selective.
Mm.
I have certain categories. I mean, I have to think this way just to keep myself organized. I'm a very open and free and generous person with people. But when I had to get serious about what I wanted to do with my life, I
Mhm.
needed my advisors. I needed my comforters when I failed. I know exactly who to call when
That's
I
good.
fail, or when I'm rejected, or when I'm humiliated. I have dear friends who don't even talk to me about work, but are just my friends in my space of friendships. I have important relationships with my kids and my husband. I
Mhm.
feel like if I'm not successful there, I'm failing everywhere else.
Mm.
So I let them give me evaluations on who I am as a mother and as a friend.
Wow.
And with them being now 2 adults, we have such a deep friendship, which I love hearing from them. So I would say find your peeps, but be really selective of the type of people that you need in your life to help you get on your life path and to help you really commit to your values in life. And
Mm.
that includes even people of faith or not. It doesn't, that to me sometimes has been like, I've heard some people say, well, if they have shared my faith, then they're one of my people. And I'm like, not necessarily. Not
Right.
necessarily. You want to have a really critical analysis of your standard of the people that you have in your life. And like for me, one of my things is they got to be able to have true beliefs that they hold with me. If
Mm.
they can't hold that with me and they're actually helping me buy into my false beliefs, I
Wow.
don't care who you are, where you're from. How am I going to get to the life that I want? And honestly, how am I going to support you as a friend that I want? If you're committed to your false beliefs, I
Wow.
can't support you in the way I want to. So that's one of my basic things that I really select people on.
Now, Dr. Penny, you went there. So were you in my therapy session yesterday? I just need to ask because now I have to ask a follow-up because your answer was so
Okay.
good. How do, how do you disconnect yourself from people that are no longer
Yeah.
serving your future or even
Oh
your
my
present?
gosh. Yeah, I could write a whole nother book on that because that's Because those of us who are loyal, like myself,
Yeah.
basically we keep asking the wrong question. How do I keep fixing this relationship? How do I keep fixing this relationship? We're asking the wrong question. What we need to say is, how do I release this relationship for the better of both of us? When I ask that question, I do much better with an answer. I'll be like, okay, I'm trying to carry too much for this person. I'm a recovering codependent because I love helping people. The shadow side of that is I love helping people. But I could become it could become my drug of choice. It distracts me from my own issues. So then I have to get really honest with myself on that and say, my next question is, now, why are you doing this, Heather? Because I'm feeling like I don't want to look at this other space in my life. And their problem is much easier than my problem. Or I'm used to being treated in a way that doesn't make me feel very good about myself, but it's familiar. So I'm comfortable with it. Wow. These are things that I've had to say to myself and say, oh, honey, that's so sad. It's like I have to pick myself as like a little kid and say, you get better. Yeah. So now, once I have that clarity, then I have the follow-up questions that help me to say, what do I want to do with it? How do I want to release it? Sometimes the person never knows. Wow. Other times it's a sad ending or a hard ending or a hard conversation because they don't want to adjust or adapt, or they're not open to my feedback. So these are all things. And this is why it's so hard, because life is never static. You know, who this person was maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago is not who they are today. That's good. And so you grew in different directions, but you don't want to be honest about it. Remember, the truth sets us free, but we're like, no, I don't want the truth. I want the relationship. The reality is I have to go back. So I'm like, Heath, you want the truth. What's the truth here? You've outgrown each other. You've grown in different directions. You've got to let this relationship go, and it can't trump whatever it is that you need. And honestly, it's not good for them either. So how you release the relationship to let it move in the direction it needs to, that's very hard for those of us who are loyal or struggle with any kind of like feeling loved issues in our background. Yeah. But it's also so important for us so that we begin to learn how to love ourselves better. Oh, Dr. Penny, you just dropped the mic. Okay, we're going to end right there. Okay. Nothing more needs to be said because you just set some people free. So I just encourage you all. This was just a snippet of her greatness, y'all. Go to her website, follow her on Instagram, sign up. You are worth the investment. And just know that she's truly, truly, truly going to help you discover, in your opinion, what your best life is. So Dr. Penny, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom. You're so welcome. I also have an e-course coming out. Okay. Yes, on my book. So it's coming out in about 2 months. Yeah. So watch my website and sign up for stuff, because the e-course will take you through the book and it make you feel like you have a coach in your corner. I love that. So y'all sign up on her mailing list so that you can be abreast to all of the updates. So thank you to all of my risers for listening. Thank you to those who are watching on our YouTube channel. And just remember to rise, because the world is waiting. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising with Christian podcast. There is someone you know who could be blessed by this episode, so share it with a friend, be a blessing, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. All right, guys, have a wonderful week, and don't forget to rise today, because your future is now.